as for every candidate anywhere in the city is, can we just let the people go to the bathroom?
Absolutely. So bathrooms are a public right. Right now, it is really challenging because if you really think about it, the only public bathrooms we have are in private businesses that technically do not have to let you in. And so that is wrong. And here's two things that I want to do. We already have pit stops. I want to make more of those 24 hours. I'm also really serious about indoor and outdoor recreational spaces like community spaces for folks, because those are public spaces which also have bathrooms where people can go, and it's for the public and it's for anybody. The only space that's really like that right now in District 6 is the public library.
We're talking about disabled citizens and veterans.
Right, well, they need to be accessible, right? Because that's the whole
Because why it's
point.
funky out there with this business.
Trying to hope you don't get kicked out of a Starbucks is not an answer.
Thank you.
Yes. Don't jinx me. So Lucy, you've been here waiting for a while.
Well, I'm going to, my name is,
I'm sorry, I got your name right.
Yes,
Yes.
Lucy, can we have no cross-talking, please?
I'm Lucy, formerly Stephen Schwartz. When I was Stephen Schwartz, I was the lead crime reporter at the Chronicle for 10 years. I was secretary of the Newspaper Guild and member of a city commission appointed by Willie Brown. I was a person of substance and power in my nice Brooks Brothers suits. I'm not a person of substance and power anymore. I became addicted after a little event called 9/11 to tranquilizers, lost my mobility, became incontinent, went through a lot of hell, live in an SRO. I have a partner who takes care of me but doesn't live with me. I'm also going through my transition. I'm going to tell you what I think of what you said and what I also think of what Mr. Haney said last week. You are obviously a very nice person. You're obviously a person, I respect you. You came to us and you made a good presentation. But what I'd like you to think about is this. I think that what you described is political business as usual, the kind of stuff I reported on in the Chronicle for many, many years. Fix this here, fix that there, listen here, listen there, find out about a complaint, find out about a complaint there. All well and good. And if you're elected, which I don't think you will be because I think Mr. Haney will win, but that's okay. I give you my best luck. If you're elected, I think you're going to be surprised because what I see coming, and I spoke to Mr. Haney about this, I saw him on Mission Street, I see something far, far beyond what people imagine in this new election. I see a deep blue tsunami, and an election can't create a revolution, but I think it's going to be the beginning of a revolution. And I thank you for your efforts to improve things bit by bit, one piece at a time. But look, I think we've had enough of moderates, and we've had enough of liberals, we've had enough of progressives. It's time to get back to what San Francisco really is, which is a radical city, and understand that we have to make radical demands and bring about radical change. And I hope that elected officials like you will go along with those changes and not stand in the way of them. And I thank you for coming.
Well, that was not a statement. Okay, we've got a question over here.
Before I gotta go, because I gotta go to work, but one thing that I've noticed as a person that works with the city and a person that volunteers a lot with the city, I volunteer with GLAD a lot. I volunteer with Downtown Street Team, besides having my own thing. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of people that are addicted to any kind of substance in the streets, you know, say that, hey, if I could afford marijuana, maybe I can get off of this, maybe I can get off of that. So what I see happening is with these big-time company guys that are taking over the cannabis trade and they're not doing compassion, it's kind of forcing people that are addicted to other things to stay addicted to those things. So we're actually putting more money in the drug dealers' pockets.
Thank you.
I've been saying that.
We're not allowing them to use cannabis as an escape from all that addiction. Now, I have a cousin that lives in an SRO. He got out of prison. He got his SRO together and everything, and he was smoking marijuana. Then marijuana became too expensive. Guess what he's doing now? Now he's smoking crystal in his room.
That's right.
Crystal's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
It lasts a lot longer, but it's very destructive. So, if there was a way that we can get compassion ballot in there where people can actually go vote and we can actually have some kind of program, it doesn't mean the marijuana, the cannabis has to be free. It could mean just a very reasonable pricing for people with low income. And if we can get that going, then maybe people can say, hey, you know what? Marijuana is less destructive. Everybody knows that marijuana is less destructive for the people that are addicted to other drugs so we can get them off of the real destructive crap, show them how to manage their what do you call, risk management and all that, and they could actually have cannabis as a substitute so they can go home and watch TV and.
Yeah.
I gotta add on to that. Last week, I believe it was, the health department held a hearing about consumption spaces. And I was so upset because it was basically about the elites getting their nice little private lounges when I was seated on and created the medical cannabis task force that was prior to the current rubber stamp task force. And our committee basically advised the city in 2012 to create 2 cannabis harm reduction centers. Had the voice of the people here been heard by the city, I think that his cousin or brother would be just fine had we not been priced out of our
That's the whole
space
thing.
that we held for 10 years, and had the city seen the brilliance in cannabis harm reduction really blowing up in San Francisco, and San Francisco taking the lead on it. Unfortunately, Vancouver beat us. They have a needle exchange program that cannabis goes right alongside with and is working. You know, and that's the key, is it
No,
works.
it's real talk. If we can get some kind of
real
ballot
talk.
in there that we can show, hey, you know what? If we actually let this happen, we could actually bring heroin consumption down, crystal consumption down. We can actually I clean up the cities every day, volunteering 3 hours a day for my personal day, and I pick up like at least 18 to 20 needles. You know, each 3 hours that I do go volunteering. You know how many needles we can get off if people would just smoke cannabis?
So let me just respond to you right quick before you run out. This is why I asked about the compassionate care legislation at the state level. I'm very familiar with this. And I'll tell you, I believe in compassionate care because I'm about results, right?
Right.
So it's one of the reasons why I would no on the cannabis tax, because it'll drive the cannabis market back to the illegal black market. It's one of the reasons why I'm for harm reduction. And for me, compassionate cannabis collaboratives are about harm reduction. They lead to real results. The retail cannabis sector is not serving those who are using low income as medicine, who would otherwise be doing other substances or doing other things that are harmful. So my messaging, you know, if I'm elected, is going to be about the outcome is to reduce harm. And I believe that compassionate care is how you get there. So I think I'll be able to have a different argument than other people
Everybody
talk
smokes
about.
cannabis, believe me. It's from a heroin addict to a crack addict to a crystal addict. But guess what? All those drugs are more cheaper than cannabis because of the way it's priced.
Yeah.
So guess what? You can have an overdose on heroin for $10 when you can have a good, clean.
So thank you. I want to make sure we get some other people because you've had your hand up for a while, sir. Ma'am, sorry.
So I've been studying a lot recently, kind of this topic in general, and I noticed kind of a pattern which San Francisco Forward.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of them?
San Francisco Forward?
Yes. It's the
Place me.
hospital of the future, as they call it. You step on a machine and it scans your whole body.
Oh, is that the one that's going in the retail spaces? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But the problem with it is that it's $150 a month, so it's a membership thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed when I was reading through the booklet on all the different propositions, every single paid thing against Proposition C, which would allocate funding for public restrooms and for medicinal aids, as well as mental health for the homeless, all of the paid negating towards that proposition came from San Francisco Forward. So I've been noticing a trend, and I did some research and found out that the tech industry itself is funding London Breed, who is then voting against Proposition C and some other things in order to appease the tech industry and their constant gentrification of the area in order to bring out more, and also at the youth center, they're pushing for more tech programs without any other alternative programs to breed a new, that's funny, London Breed, breeding a new age of youth and technology who would then be living in the Tenderloin area and then getting housing in the Tenderloin area, driving up the cost of rent because of their now higher incomes due to their tech jobs. And I've been seeing a pattern that basically stems from the tech industry pumping money into pushing the poor out without offering an alternative solution like Proposition C would, by helping allow for programs like you're talking about
Right.
to get people in touch with the medications they need rather than the illegal medications that they should not be having off front line.
So I didn't
That's
hear
a
your
lot,
question.
but that's cool.
But that's cool. Let me respond to just a couple things in there. So I support Prop C. I've written a lot on my I support Prop C. Yeah, so I support Prop C. There's a lot in there about spending a lot of things I'm talking about. Yeah, so I was going to get to that. Kind of what you're talking, I mean, I don't want to get into the politics. I mean, I support Prop C, so I hope it passes. I'm working for it. I got the sign.
is working with Forward.
He gave him, so
let her reply.
So,
Can you guys,
But Forward is the
Let's
one
let
pushing
her-
against Prop C, even though Benioff supports Prop C, he's funding those who work actively against and fund those who read their statements in the paper to condemn Prop C.
okay, so let's let her answer.
so I want to stay focused on, I'm sorry, no, it's okay. I want to stay focused. People want to talk about Prop C, I'm happy to. The only thing I will say, just clarifying a couple things you said, this is what I want. Benioff has given $1 million for Prop C, like to pass Prop C. You know, London Breed has come out against it. I don't agree with her reasoning.
She's funded by Big Tech.
Okay.
Well, okay, so I don't want to, I mean, honestly, I don't even know
She's
why.
not debating
I'm not
London Breed,
debating.
though. She's
I'm not-
stating her position
My position
for
is that I'm for
what you're
Prop C.
supporting.
I'm because not only am I for Prop C personally, but also as anybody running for office and anyone in office, it's going to be. I don't understand how you can say that you want to spend money on things that we need to spend money on, shelter navigation centers, supportive housing, all these services, but you're not forgetting the money that we need to do it, right? So I don't really understand that. I'm not going to sit here and stump for folks who don't support Prop C because I've done a lot of homework on it and I support it and we need it. And so I'll leave it at that, but I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about more what I know about some of the politics around it because it is a little bit messier than what you're talking about, but I'm for it and I just have to leave the rest alone.
So I want to get to two sort of core members of Axis of Love. Actually three. I see Savannah has her hand up. So I want to go Denise, Aster, and Savannah. And then, and Pam, you had your hand up too. Darn. Oof.
5:30? I'm here till 5:30, right?
Yeah, are we all right? Can we-
Yeah, it's
Okay,
5:09.
Okay, so we have time, if you have time.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just start with Denise and then go through this little trail here. So Denise, you had some questions prepared. I know that she was doing a lot of research prior.
Yes.
Well, in between doing other stuff. But from what I'm seeing around town, we're seeing a lot of cops and not outreach. I'm not seeing any. In fact, I'm not really seeing any outreach at all. And I have a street side view, you know, of Eddie and Taylor, you know, and sometimes it's more interesting than what's on TV, and I pay $200 a month for that shit.
You should not. You should cut the cord.
I
No,
know.
right.
I have to. But anyway,
But no,
so
that's okay.
I've got this, we've got a lot of, and there's a lot of city-sanctioned police brutality going on, you know. And I know there's garbage around, and it's a bad thing, but I think that the poor people are being blamed too much, you know, for this. And I know that you know this, and I know you have a good sounding solutions for that. And it just seems like there's too many police around, you know.
So-
That's really bad. And that big police van, and I walked by it today. I'm like,
The one
oh,
on the
yeah, it's always there.
Mobile
It's
phone.
like, it almost feels like, you know, all we need are swastikas, you know?
So is that?
I'm not digging it.
No,
So
it's okay.
what would you, how do you feel about that?
Yes. Okay.
And
Yeah.
I have another question about Prop 10. Do you support Prop 10?
I don't have a position on Prop 10, which
No
I have to get to.
position.
So let me ask you.
And I think is the reason why you don't have a position is because you want to return the rental market and push up the date from 1979 up to
Yes.
maybe sometime in the 80s
No.
when the buildings were built, say push it up to the 80s, or how far ahead in the future do you want to push the rent control time year?
Questions, Denise.
Good question. So there's two different questions. I'm going to go backwards because the Prop 10 question is easier.
Yeah.
And then I will talk about police and public safety and the other piece. So on Prop 10, the reason why I have been telling people that I decline to say the position is because people have painted the story of if you are for Prop 10, then you are for more rent control, and if you're not for Prop 10, then you're not for rent control, and it's actually not true. Prop 10 just says local control. It just says every city and county can do whatever they want. So it doesn't tell you anything. And so what I try to focus on is tell you what you want to know, which is how do I feel about rent control? And what I want to do is I do want to move the 1979 date forward. For those who do not know, Costa-Hawkins is a state law that freezes rent control in time. There's some nuances. It's a little bit different if you're in different counties, but for San Francisco, what it means is any building built after 1979, you cannot have rent control. And what that means is over time, eventually nothing will be rent control because over time buildings get demolished, they get substantially renovated, and we have rules in our building code that if you change a certain percentage of a building, you consider it new construction. So over time, nothing becomes rent control, and I think that that's not fair. So what I want to do is that date should roll forward. So basically, it should be something like, and I don't have the exact number, you have to do a little more analysis, but let's say you build a building today. After 10 years, it should be rent control, right? So what that means is the 1979 date would roll to like 1990 something, and then it would keep going forward. So as you continue to build new buildings, after some time, they all become rent control, and then in a period of time, you have more rent control buildings than less, which would be the opposite of what Costa-Hawkins is today. So that is my position. That's what I would vote on. And frankly, I as a planning commissioner, I'm very familiar with Costa-Hawkins. See, I knew what this law was well before there was any such thing as Prop 10. And I have said publicly for years that there is an issue with Costa-Hawkins and it needs to be, at minimum, amended, if not repealed, with something else. So we have this opportunity now. We'll see if it passes. But the change that I'm talking about, I want to do it if it passes or if it doesn't pass. I think there's an opportunity now to use this housing crisis to have our state delegation make this change for San Francisco, even if Prop 10 doesn't pass. And I think we'd get the votes for it, whereas the previous years it would have been a lot harder.
So that might be why there's people supporting you that don't understand the issue. That don't understand Prop 10. That's just my take.
A lot of folks haven't read Costa-Hawkins, which is kind of confusing, and then a lot of folks, which it's fine. Like, there's a lot of confusing things on the ballot, so it's
the
totally
whole
fine.
thing, like, people didn't understand Prop 64 and how terrible it was because there were 67 pages to go through, and as an experienced policy reader, the devil's in the detail. And so a lot of sometimes the spin, right, the political spin comes from the fact that politicians know everybody isn't sitting there policy reading everything.
That's right. And I'll give you the example of why I've not given a decision. You won't find many people in San Francisco like this, but you could be yes on Prop 10 and hate rent control. Like, you want Prop 10 so that you can roll back rent control on everything. And that's what you want your local county to do. So that is why I keep telling people that. Prop 10 doesn't tell you what a politician would actually vote for, like what would they actually change. The question should be, what do you want to be different about the rent control? And then if Prop 10 passes, you have the opportunity to do that, right? So that's how I would sound.
I wanted to get to Pam, Savannah, and Oscar. Pam?
Oh, you said you spent years on the Hunter's Point Advisory Board. In your estimation, why is it so hard for the city to clean up this Superfund site?
Yeah. The Superfund, oh, that's a mess. Okay, so Hunters Point
Good
Shipyard, you guys may have seen it in the news. Obviously, this is District 10, but I'm happy to answer this question. So the Navy is responsible for the shipyard cleanup. It was a naval shipyard, and federal law for Superfund site, which it is because it's got a lot of contamination, says that whoever is responsible for the site is responsible for the cleanup. In this case, it happens to be the Navy. What happened with is that there was outright fraud. The Navy, I mean, literally it's just outright fraud. I mean, the Navy hired a contractor to do testing of the soil. Okay, what's in the soil, so that we know whether or not you can just put a cap on top. Do we need to dig up all the soil and take it to the same place that we take soil from, like, nuclear power plants? Can you do something else? Because that's what they do when we run nuclear power plants.
I know.
And so they were supposed to do that testing, and literally they didn't do it. They had core. They would take they wouldn't take the core samples from the parcel. They would go to Home Depot and get some dirt and say that was the core.
Are you serious?
Yes, I'm
And they got paid
telling you. Millions of dollars.
Millions.
They did not do. They didn't do. I mean, they would do like a couple of cores, and then that's what they found. It was fraud. that it's not that they didn't test them. The dirt literally wasn't from those places. And so the challenge was everyone's looking around like, what do you do? Because when I was on the Hunters Point Shipyard CAC, the Navy was supposed to have its own citizen oversight. Whenever there's a Superfund site, the Navy's responsible. The Navy has their own version of a citizen advisory committee. They disbanded their citizen advisory committee. It has a different name, but they disbanded it because they had a bunch of rabble-rousers who were saying, hey, what's going on with this cleanup? You're not giving us enough information. So the Navy decided to disband their advisory board. And then the Hunters Point CAC, we were getting reports, but we didn't have environmental scientists. Like, we were a citizen advisory board. So unlike the Navy board, where they're supposed to have seats for people who are like more technical, we didn't have that. And so unless I'm literally out there with a suit, like saying, hey, you digging up that core sample, like, there would be no way for us to audit that and know. And so that's what happened. And now we're to today. And the real challenge is, if they hadn't built, they've already built homes out there. One of the candidates for District 10 Supervisor lives out there. If they hadn't built those homes, you could say, well, too bad, so sad for the developer and their plan. We're back to square one. We'll just actually do the testing and then see what we need to do. The challenge is you got people who live out there now. And if the answer is that the soil is dirty enough that what you really need to do is dig it all up, take it out to Nevada where they spread out the, Superfund soil, and put in fresh topsoil. Well, how are you going to do that if people live there? That's a very intensive process.
Yeah.
So I got to tell you right now, I'm not real sure what they're going to do, but I can tell you that I'm open to all options. And all options may include we're back to square one with the development, and we may need to reimburse people. Like I don't want to put the city in liability in case I'm actually I'm there and I got to vote on this, but it's a mess, and I'm open to anything we can do to fix it. But it's really.
Did they prosecute the people who got all that money?
They're working on it, so there may be some criminal charges for the
Sounds like there should be.
Yeah.
What's the name of that blue hair was out front? Aaron Brockovich. This is Aaron Brockovich.
This is Aaron Brockovich times 10. This is crazy. So
Ew.
we're gonna see. There's definitely gonna be charges. This is not the end of it. But I was trying to direct my answer to my question more on. But there's people living out there now. So people might go to jail. It's gonna be a big deal. But you still got people living out there, and what are we gonna do? So I gotta tell you right now, there's not a lot of
Do
answers
you
right
think
now.
the city bears any responsibility for this?
I don't think so. Honestly, the Navy is responsible for it, and they.
Maybe don't care.
Then they don't care. I think we're responsible for what do we do next. We can't just be like sitting here and be like, oh well. But as for the fraud itself,
So you're living on that.
Is there any proof of the whole fraud thing?
yeah. There's proof. I mean, that's how there was a whistleblower from the contractor, and that's what they were saying. And then they did the testing and found it that the soil that they said was the core sample from whatever, like parcel G, it actually wasn't from there.
Okay.
And they never took the core samples from there. Yeah, they went and they compared core samples. So like if you take dirt from here and you take it from here, it's gonna have similar properties.
Yeah.
And the cores that they were saying was from here, they weren't. So it really was like fraud.
I want to go to Oscar and Savannah, so Oscar.
Trying out somewhere, like fucking 8 o'clock.
I came in late, I didn't get your name.
I'm Christine Johnson,
Same fucking question.
Christine Johnson, you're running for what?
What?
District 6 Supervisor.
District 6? I'm not District 6.
Oh.
I was in District 6, now I'm District 8.
Oh, that's okay.
They
We can bring it back.
They redrew it.
Anyway, my question actually was for showing up, but since you brought up the Navy shipyard, I understand that anything dealing with governments and lawyers, they have their own dictionary and their own language. And these educated people with computers, I don't understand how they get slipped. Like Muni, the new electronic Muni with the ears on the electric, they can't they eliminate them from the 33 line because they can't make it up a hill.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a lot of money. And now they can't get their money back either.
Aye.
But that's an example. And there's a lot of examples I can go on, but I'm not. Because what I don't understand is the language of lawyers. I don't understand. And I'm pretty sure a lot of education people don't. And that's the problem. They use their own language.
Yes.
Right, and so bringing policy to the people and having everything put in a
English.
way that people who speak English conversationally can understand.
So let me tell you
Shirley,
in
can I ask
response.
a question after your last person?
So let me respond to that real quick. This is why I got into public service. When I got appointed to the Hunters Point Shipyard CAC, they were giving us documents like this that were environmental review documents, that were development documents, that were a lot of different things. And I realized that what they were doing was they were saying that they were being transparent, but what they were doing was handing that same stack of documents to the public and being like, okay, what do you think? And I saw that right when I first, that was like I actually was shocked by it. And by this time, you know, I'm not a lawyer, but I did work in consulting. I work with lawyers all the time. You know, I had a little bit of a background in reading big documents and parsing them down. You know, I'm like, if I'm a regular person who just cares about my community, I'm not reading this. And then you just telling me, like, what do you think? So I've actually spent 14 years with that being my ethos. I did it when I was on 100 Shipyard. I did it when I was on OCII. I did it when I was on planning. Like, I read everything and I do my homework so that when people ask me questions, I can give them an answer that makes sense. And so that's why I was able to tell you about the Hunters Point Shipyard, because that's not in, I mean, the Chronicle did a expose on it. But before that, the only way to know about it was to read this. Reports from DPH and reports from, you know, OCII and all sorts of stuff. And so if you really wanted to know what the story was, it's like, I don't, you know, how do you do that? So that's how I want to be as a supervisor. I want to break things down for people, like, this is why it is the way it is. And of course, still do your homework. I really want people to, like, if you can, show up to City Hall, read things, watch SFW TV online or on TV, like, listen to what your people are saying, the electeds are saying, leaders are saying. But my job will be to do that homework for you guys, and I've done that for a really long time.
I have a question for her as well.
Well, let me get to Savannah's question, and then I can take a few questions. And
I know Billy had a question too.
Yeah, so I want to just, Savannah, you've been waiting very patiently. Thank you.
I got a question about the violence because my sister got attacked by a building last night.
I know, she called me
Yeah.
from the hospital.
I was
I'm
there.
gonna go see her.
But my question is, what are you gonna do about the violence in the neighborhood? Because I live at the Heartland up here in Locken and Gary, and last year I heard the shot that killed Bubbles, and he was right there dead outside my window. And at night, I'm scared to go out. My wife's scared to go out past 10 o'clock
Yeah, me too.
because she don't want to go no after 10 because of the violence. Because she's afraid of getting jumped and getting beat. So am I. So what can be done to make it to it's safer at night us to go out if we're going to the movies, or we're going to eat, or we're coming from a ball game, or from the 4th of July fireworks or somewhere, come from somewhere in the city? What can be done to make it more safe to be out at night when we're trying to get home? We're just trying to make a quick grocery run.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get back to, you had a question about police and public safety, so I'm going to tie my answer together with that. So the level of violence out of control, Candy called me from the hospital last night. She got attacked
No reason.
randomly for no reason. And so here's what I believe. You know, we need to, there's environmental design issues, right? There's still a lot of blocks where we don't have the lighting that people have been asking for years. We still have too many like dark corners that are just a matter of like street design, right?
Yeah.
But I want to go beyond that and talk about the people on the street. So I really, again, I believe in having places for people to be because it actually makes it easier for community organizations that are alternatives to 911 and frankly foot patrols and the police